Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Very pleased that I have Hilmar from CCP Games. How's it going, Hilmar?
It's going great. Very happy to be here, talking to you about awesome things.
Good. So, an enormous amount to talk about, but I think I'm going to sort of go back to basics, at least my basics with you. And I started going to blockchain game conferences in about 2018, and I don't know if you were going to blockchain game conferences before then, but certainly, you were around then, and that was a long time before you were publicly sort of talking about blockchain games. So I sort of wonder, maybe it's good to get a bit of sort of background to your thinking. Why were you going to blockchain game conferences in 2018? What were you interested in crypto? Did it seem like a technology that was going to be obviously something you were using in your games in future? Was it just curiosity? What was the thinking there?
Well, I am at heart a very curious person,
Yes.
and my first job at CCP was being a CTO. So my curiosity often lies in the domain of technology. Eve itself is a bit of in many ways, a technological marvel. Certainly at the time, it still kind of is, and this kind of idea of enabling impossible things through technology advancement is just generally my state of being. I am always kind of dabbling in many things. So I think what piqued my interest about blockchains overall was like a meeting I had once. It was like a pitch meeting for a company that was using the Bitcoin blockchain to store digital assets. It was like it was almost like an NFT-esque like phenomenon on Bitcoin. I mean, for those who understand the protocol, it's kind of using it to store Bitcoin values is kind of an emergent outcome on the unspent outputs in a way. So you can use the protocol for several other things. I mean, the Lightning Network is in many ways implementing like in a kind of a layered way another functionality. And I generally like this idea of when making architectures or any design to think about sort of layering. Like the internet is a great example. People talk a lot about layer 4 in the internet, but it's layer 4. There's a lot underneath it, and there's a lot above. So this person was kind of pitching the idea of storing spaceships on the Bitcoin blockchain, and I was like, wow, okay. I should maybe learn more about this. And then I go on a bit of a journey on figuring out exactly what this whole phenomenon is. It did take an embarrassing long time to get to the bottom of it. Like I have to say it was kind of weird. I was kind of like, have I lost it? Like, it's like 15. It's like, am I getting too old for this? Or why? Why am I here? Still not really figuring out what this whole thing is about. And then when I eventually get to the bottom of it, I mean, it is complicated and also not complicated. And there were these kind of recollections I had. So before I joined CCP, I was working for a company called Oz Interactive, and we were making a VRML browser to make the metaverse back in the late 90s. And it's actually there we did sort of probably 3 distinct architecture patterns to go and solve that for, like, our servers were 286s. And one of them was a distributed peer-to-peer simulation system called the object system. And we kind of stood that up completely, but the problem with the object system is that because of peer-to-peer, it was not driven by either cryptography or consensus of what is true state. So you couldn't really do anything with it other than sort of Minecraft creative mode stuff, like where people were just doing things kind of like you do in Minecraft Creative Mode. And it's very easy now today to talk about the distinction between Minecraft Creative Mode and Minecraft Survival Mode. Now, if you talk to kids about what EVE Online is about, it's way simpler to explain to kids than adults, because everyone has played Minecraft and understand the distinction of like a diamond pyramid in Creative Mode means different than diamond pyramid in Survival Mode. So we kind of abandoned that idea, but I was always fascinated with this idea of having a full peer-to-peer system with no server running just through the effort of people participating. So when I was doing this exploration, kind of 15, 16, trying to understand what Bitcoin blockchain was really, again, embarrassingly long time, I was there. Then obviously there's like a lot of activity in 2017, and I kind of followed that, and it was very interesting to go to the forums of all these sort of warring layer 1 chains. Kind of this was the sort of CryptoKitties / ICO wave of activity, I mean, when I was looking at some of the sort of communities around this, one thing stood out. People were talking a lot about EVE, and a lot of people were EVE players talking about like analogies from EVE, and also a lot of people that knew nothing about EVE just speculating about what EVE was, and other MMOs. And in many ways, the texture of the communities felt quite a bit like in the early days of MMOs, where people were bragging about their own MMO to other MMO communities. It did feel very sort of similar, and I was like, oh my god, they've kind of made an MMO without making a game. And it just became more fascinating. Then obviously it all comes crashing down.
Yes.
And so when it was all properly crashed, I became more interested to go to blockchain conferences. So I went to my first blockchain conference in 2018. It was in Lyon over the summer. There was a blockchain gaming conference in Lyon, and I found that to be a much nicer environment to like because when whatever it's called, when it's crypto summer, there's just too much noise, hard to really see through. But during winter, what remains is an interesting bit. So that's when I started actually going to events after just doing kind of nerding out on my own.
Cool. Okay, so you've definitely come at this sort of problem with an engineering sort of point of view, and I guess famously, I don't know if it was you, I think it was you, but there's a description of EVE Online as being a database game, and I think that was maybe, I don't know, a bit of a throwaway comment, but obviously blockchains have been also described as very slow databases. So I guess we can see there's maybe a sort of a Venn diagram there. But when did it sort of become clear to you that this was actually going to be a useful technology for making games? And I guess a slightly different question is, when did it become clear that this would be a useful technology for a EVE Online type game?
So when we back in the day when we were making EVE Online, because we came from this background back at Oz of making sort of distributed architectures to power a metaverse, kind of Neil Stephenson inspired, and what we ended up with was kind of Minecraft Creative Mode. And we were always like, we were gamers, we were playing games, I was playing MUDs and Ultima and whatnot. And this idea of what happens in the world has meaning, and it has persistent. And not only sort of character inventory persistent, which is a lot of multiplayer games are really just, it's really just your own inventory that is persistent. You're often not very much acting on the world as the world being a persistent world. EVE is kind of on the extreme spectrum of being more a world than a character inventory game or a character progression game. And there are pros and cons to that. I mean, this is in many ways why EVE is often a little hard to get into. It is a lot preoccupied about being a world, and it's kind of, the the game part is a well, both are a work improvement. Like there are hundreds of people working on EVE Online for decades to continue to improve upon that. But in any case, when we were thinking about this, it really does matter how the persistency is done. Like to make it persistent, we should use technology that is known for being good at persisting things. Back in those days, most games, if they were persisting anything, they were literally just doing it into a flat file on the disk of the server. I don't have like deep archaeology to substantiate this, but I do suspect that EVE is the first database game, because when we made this declaration, we're going to use a database, and we couldn't afford an Oracle database, so Microsoft had like an upstart with Microsoft SQL Server, and we're going to use that because it was cheaper. People were very much kind of, frankly laughing at us. It's just like, why would you ever use a database? They're slow, they're like, no game uses them, and like nobody has made a database game before. But we were like, okay, I mean, we're making a persistent world. It's going to be a lot of items, has to be transactional sound. You have to like go all third normal form on the whole like entity relation diagram and yada yada yada. So we go full ham on that, and EVE is shockingly much a database application with a fancy graphical UI on top of it. EVE is more like a bank than anything else really, and because none of us had made games before, like nobody on the EVE team had made a game before. I mean, most of us hadn't even seen a game developer from afar. Like, it's just like EVE is the first game ever made in Iceland and all that. So we came a lot more from like an enterprise background / virtual world creation. So we thought about it like, okay, there's like a warehousing system for like a DIY kind of do-it-yourself kind of a construction store. Like we thought about, we're very much okay. If you have like nails, how do you organize million nails in a warehousing system? There's a lot of thought. Literally, the heart of the EVE system is called the inventory table, and it's called the inventory table because it's organized like an inventory of a mega do-it-yourself department store. So anyway, that was a long ramble about that phase. So, but as soon as we release EVE Online, then it becomes acutely clear that people are very interested about like what is in the database, and this was happening at the time. Like a lot of MMOs were releasing the metadata, like metadata about item types and things like that, to various community websites, then which were like promoting like ways to browse the different items in the game and how you can compose them into builds and things like that. So there was a lot of sort of fan site activity around MMOs where people were taking the data of the game and presenting it in different ways, often better ways. So we start releasing Excel documents about like the metadata about the game, but there's this clear call out for like, we want more. Like, okay, we should make something like an API or some way to like make this sustainable. So we open an API to read metadata, read some historical data and a bit of the runtime data, and this sprouts an ecosystem of amazing experiences which third-party developers have created around EVE. You can go to a GitHub repository called Awesome EVE. You can probably just link it in a description or something. And there you can see what kind of software people are building around EVE. And it is a lot of software to help people run companies. Companies in EVE Online literally have their own HR software, they have their own onboarding mechanisms and all sorts of like amazing things that have been built. But it's largely based on reads. There's a tiny amount of write, but it is not like a very easy thing to add that after the fact. We have a very ambitious roadmap to continue with this phenomenon in EVE, and I think over time we will get to a very interesting place. But again, back to the blockchain curiosity, is that they are very much obsessing about rights. It was one of the things I quickly realized when I was talking to people in this space. When people are thinking TPS, they are usually thinking a lot about the rights. And the reads, and most applications, they read more than they write, are mostly just hand-waved of like, yeah, there are some indexers which you can read from. They index the state and whatnot. So it's a very interesting centralization, decentralization argument of like, okay, if the reads are centralized and the writes are decentralized, what does that really mean? Who really holds the truth about what's going on? Is that the blockchain or the indexers? Anyway, that's more philosophy than anything else. In any case, what is interesting about like a system like Ethereum, which is kind of trying to be a computer more than kind of a Bitcoin being a database, is that the environment is very adversarial. Like everything on Ethereum is kind of like competing for attention, competing for block space. It's a very adversarial environment. Just like EVE Online is a very adversarial environment. So here is a phenomenon that is proven that it can manage a decentralized ecosystem of people in an adversarial state doing read and write in a pretty interesting global state on Ethereum, and it's largely holding up. I mean, there's a lot of issues from UX to God knows what, but at the heart of it, it kind of is a multiplayer computer that people are PvPing on. And then it was like, okay, if we want to properly do like a system where we, the creator of the world, really just have the same access as third-party developers, we have no special privilege, then this seems like a way to build it. And it was very much done with the eye towards how do we further enable third-party development, because that has been extremely huge part of the success of EVE Online, is the ecosystem that is developed around the game and explores many kind of directions that often we don't have bandwidth or frankly even imagination to do. So, okay, how about building it on that premise? Because, I mean, it at least has proven that. I mean, there are scalability issues, there are all sorts of issues. But this heart of it, that it is a multiplayer computers where engineers can do PvP, well, okay. And there's a big, deep list of things that do enable that. Like just the fact that you're charging for opcodes kind of makes a Sybil resistance on bad code, which is one of the perpetual problems you have with API gateways. You always end up metering them. Any API system ends up with metering. I mean, there was like a few years ago, like Twitter and Reddit were shutting down their API mainly because people were like excessively reading from these services, probably for AI training at the time. But you always need some metering system. And every time I was rattling this in my brain, how do you really make a system that is like provably sound? You end up with something that has a lot of blockchain-like components to it. And one of the ideas was actually just to take Ethereum, pull out the Merkle trees, and use like a Merkle tree-less Ethereum to run like a scripting engine to do it. Like, which actually isn't like a bad idea. But then we thought about this, okay, if we truly are to just be a janitor of the system with no more agency than somebody else, then we also need to find a way to decentralize the whole computer. And then once you're in that, you just really end up with something like a blockchain.
Yeah, yeah. That definitely again makes sense from the system engineer's sort of point of view. I guess the next part is you have EVE Online, very successful, very hardcore game that people are spending sort of their lives in, getting married, all these people building stuff, having businesses in there, and you in your head think, well, that's very much like a blockchain game. Blockchain obviously wasn't around when EVE started. Now blockchain is around; it can be useful, and so you start putting these things together and thinking, how can we get blockchain? How can EVE Online as a game and blockchain? How can we put that together? So I guess it was impossible to sort of rebuild EVE, the current iteration of EVE, as a blockchain game. So you then have to go, we're going to build something new. And I guess you were sort of careful in how you described it. So you didn't say it was a blockchain version of EVE. You said it's a blockchain game built in the EVE universe. But is it? And I can see we'll talk maybe a bit about reaction or audience reaction to blockchain. But effectively this is sort of a. I mean, you would never say this. So I'm putting these words in your mouth. This is effectively like EVE 2, is it? Or because you're basically rebuilding EVE using the blockchain, and that's sort of the key sort of USB to it. Or are you going to sort of kick back against me putting the EVE 2 words in your mouth?
Yeah, I mean, those words are put in our metaphorical aggregate mouth a lot. I really think about that like that. I very much, so often when I think of like what is a mental model, to think about like what is EVE in a sort of more anthropomorphic sense. And I always think about it more like a city than a country. And I think about it like a city because when I am kind of like, let's call me a mayor of it, at least for a period of times, it's kind of goes in and out how much people perceive me as being directly involved in EVE. But let's call the agency like that. It's a city, and I'm some sort of mayor over it. And I like city more than a country because countries are a fairly late stage development. I mean, from the Versailles Agreement, I mean it's past a few hundred years old. Like cities have existed for thousands of years. It's a very clear model, like Babylon, Hammurabi, clay tablets, police, and army. Like city states where it's at for most of human history. And let's take like a city. Let's imagine EVE like Rome. I mean, it's freaking cool. It's existed for thousands of years. It still exists. It's a pretty amazing place. It's gone up and down in various things over the few thousand years. But it's rather legendary. It used to be heart of the world, and I mean, still is in a way. It's an amazing place. Now we're going to build a new one, and then I think about like New York. So New York is a fairly young city on a standard of Rome. But it's like built out of different materials. We have like steel and glass, and we have like urban planning, and it's made very differently. So I think about this like quite a bit of sort of we're now building a new city out of different materials in a different place. It should in many ways enrich Rome indirectly just through its existence. Rome is not a worse city just because New York exists. And I kind of like the Rome-New York analogy because there was a lot of Italians that took part in creating New York. There was people coming all over the world to make New York, and a few of them, or I don't really know the exact numbers, but I don't know, it has, to me, a bit of an Italian vibe. So is New York Rome 2.0? I mean, not really. It's just different. So that's why we also tuned a bit the kind of the premise of it. It's more like a survival experience than an MMO. So it's kind of a persistent world, multiplayer, single sharded survival experience, which I don't really think anyone has done. So it seems like a genre that should exist. I mean, you were talking about the hardcoreness of Eve, and it, interestingly, in many ways, and if you, join our Founder Access, you will find it's actually weirdly more hardcore. It wasn't hardcore enough, but that's a little bit like the effect of probably when people were building New York, it was pretty hardcore to get it off the ground. By contrast, and probably the foundation of Rome was hardcore. So we thought like, okay, if we are to like really like build something from scratch with a community, then it has to be a bit hardcore in the beginning. So I often think about it in like Daniel Day-Lewis movies come to mind. Is it like The Last Mohican? Is it There Will Be Blood? Or is it Gangs of New York? And I'm like, okay, it's somewhere on this spectrum. It's hard to place it. You best that people just try it and figure out what Daniel Day-Lewis movie am I in.
Yeah. Okay, so good analogies there. I guess the founding fathers thought they were very much aped the Roman Republic. So I guess you have your Rome, New York sort of comparison in the culture of the countries as well. Playing a little bit on that culture, as I sort of mentioned before, sort of when you were announced that there were sort of rumours. I think probably in 2023 it would have been rumours were going around that Eve was going to go blockchain, and there still is a very vocal group of people who hate blockchain, certainly in games, and you had to put out a statement saying Eve wasn't going to go blockchain. That was before you announced what has now become Eve Frontier. So have you, in general, as you say, this game is super hardcore. so I imagine it's mainly being populated by sort of Eve players. I imagine it's not quite at a stage where you're seeing a whole bunch of new players sort of rocking into this exciting new city you're building using blockchain. So how have you found the sort of the reaction to the sort of current Eve community, which is obviously you're seeding into the game? So how's that worked?
Well, number one, out the gate, Eve players want CCP and everyone at CCP solely focused on Eve Online. Anytime we try something different, it already, people have feedback on that. So when we thought of this project and factoring that in, we made sure we raised outside capital to do it. So if we go back to the Rome, New York analogy, if our subscription fee in EVE Online is kind of a tax on the Romans, then we're not using that tax to build New York. It really is a separate venture in the grandest scheme of that word. So we raised private capital to do it. I mean, you can kind of almost think about go back to East India Company that started this whole idea of we're selling shares in a venture. So that at least helps a bit with that. We're separately funding it. That does help. It doesn't help everything. It still is. People live in a city. I mean, I live in London. There's a lot that can be improved in London, even though it existed for a few thousand years. So it's just cities are an ongoing project all the time, and so is EVE Online and New Eden. And people are naturally demanding on us making their living experience better, and we have hundreds of people at CCP that are dedicated to that. But I do believe that by building a new city, we will become better at building cities just overall, in general. The fact that we're building Rome and New York at the same time will just give us a better understanding of what it is to build a city. And there are pieces of technologies and techniques and procedures, etc., that over time will just make us better city builders. That should benefit both of them. So rather than putting a skyscraper on top of the Colosseum, which would be one way to do it, we're just, okay, now we're going over here, we're going to build New York. Then, I mean, obviously, people are concerned about and often technology brings culture and philosophy, and and it just became very clear that the players just want to stick to how it is. Like it's again like, okay, Rome is built on a certain premise. Just because now you have like grid urban style planning doesn't mean like again you force that onto like put Rome on a grid like New York is on a grid. Again, it just like it's just cleanest to keep these things separated, and I think that has given some reassurances that we are very much committed to EVE Online. We absolutely are, and over time we should become better city builders just by building more than one. And I mean, of course, this is all just sort of philosophy and intentions, and these are the intentions. But then people just go and live day by day. We release EVE expansions, and people are very passionate about holding us to a very high standard, which we love, even if it sometimes can be a tough job. Which again, any mayor in any city will say this.
So, continuing the city building analogy, which I think is an interesting one. Obviously, as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. So maybe I should stop the analogy here. But you're in the very early stages of EU Frontier. So I think you're saying it's a sort of closed alpha. You can buy your way in at the moment. There are actually some free options as well. But this is clearly, a multi-year sort of process, because you're really building. I mean, this is where the analogy is quite good. You're building literally from the bottom up. You're sort of trying to build a whole new ecosystem. So this is a real, long-term project.
Yeah, and not only are we building it from the ground up, we are building the tools for people to build it with us. So it is very much built on this premise that we are going to provide nature and physics, but we are not going to build the actual city. Like this is a true decentralized effort in the way that we're going to build tools for people to build cities. We're going to build city builder tools, and that is a rather unique thing to do. I mean, analogies are probably Roblox and Unreal Engine for Fortnite are kind of examples of people either building tools for people to make games in the Roblox sense, and a little bit in the Unreal Engine for Fortnite also. But what people end up building there are individual games, which are kind of it's like game. They don't really share a lot between them. What we're doing here is that we're building a persistent world where we provide physics, nature, chemistry, those kind of things, those asteroids, solar systems, etc. But the city itself is going to be literally built, and not only built in the sense of EVE Online, where we built a citadel. They're going to be built like from software development and up. And already we're seeing tremendous kind of success in that already in the playtest, where people have built amazing things with the tools we have provided, and also given us even more sort of focus on making sure that the tools are not only good, but they are quite transformational. And here again, because the premise of doing it on top of a blockchain, which have been an adversarial economic warfare systems for decades, that does help, because you don't have to worry about like all the depth of the stack. We can at least build on top of something that is a kind of a sound basis to build on.
And I guess at this point we should point out that as well as all the blockchain stuff you're doing, you're actually building on a sort of an Ethereum L2 L3 called it's from Lattice. It's called is it Redstone? That's the one.
Yes, I mean,
but as well as doing that. Well,
yeah, we're very much building on top of mud. Like our interface is more mud, and then
okay.
I mean, Redstone is the best way to run mud right now. But what has helped us tremendously is the mud framework that has created a certain kind of abstraction that is very elegantly done by Lattice. Like it's like a ECS kind of style pattern that fits very well with games. So we have a good kind of middleware, for lack of a better word. And then we currently run it on Redstone, which is going great. I mean, that is the best way to run mud. But the beauty of mud is we could actually kind of fairly easily move it around to any sort of EVM compatible system.
Okay, so that's on the blockchain side of things, but I guess equally going back to your sort of city building analogy, you're open sourcing your own dev tools that you've been using to make EVE Online as well, Carbon, I think. So I guess that's quite a big process as well when you've had something internally that hasn't been designed to be open sourced, and then you're but you obviously you feel that's part of the sort of decentralization, tool building ethos.
So I think it is a part of the openness ethos. Like what we are doing as much as we can, and maybe even more than makes sense, you could argue, is that make everything as open as can be. Like the openness to the platform of we can build on it is very open. The economy is open, can compose with the real world. Open source with the source code. We are building this as much in an open way as can be. So this, in many ways, just aligns with that. I've often proposed the question internally of often people do question, it's a lot of work to go open source with something that has been closed for decades. And I often propose the different question, what is really the value of having it closed? Where does the value of having it closed come from? And there really is no value in having it closed. Even Unreal Engine, which is one of the most amazing piece of game technology ever created, the source code is open. It's out there for everyone. It isn't quite like an open source project, but the source code is open. You can contribute to it. We use it here where I sit in London, in our London office. We're building Vanguard, which is an Unreal 5 shooter. And it is amazingly more easy to use it like that. We have used Unreal 3 before, which was closed source. And the fact that the source code of Unreal 5 is open just makes everything so much simpler. We do find a lot of bugs. I mean, any piece of software that is millions of lines obviously has bugs in it. But our precision in pointing those out, and frankly even propose fixes, is so much higher when we just have the full source code available. So as you are a third-party developer building the frontier with us, the fact that you can just see the whole source code is just going to be better. And even if it isn't readily obvious why some of the engine pieces and the editors, etc., benefit from being open source, they just will. I know, like a decade from now, the city built on the frontier will be inherently better from all these things being open.
Cool. Lovely. Well, thank you, Hilmar. You won't know, during the podcast I've been suffering with some internet problems, so I think you've given us a great introduction to what's going on with the Frontier. We've sort of scratched the surface, really, but as you said, it's going to be sort of many years, so we'll come back in at some point and see how things are going. Hopefully, when my internet is improved. But thank you very much. It was very it was good. You're always very philosophical. I think you're always very good at going back to first principles in history and stuff, which is not something we get in the tech space very much. So thank you for your patience and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Great conversation.
And thanks to you guys for watching, listening to the podcast. Every episode we are talking to the people who are building out this incredibly new way of playing games and building communities and building businesses and all this sort of stuff. And I think Eve Frontier is definitely one that is on the frontier of that. I guess that's why you call it that. So don't miss out, do subscribe, and we'll see you next time.